Hi, my name is Annie of Esther and Eileen, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do a mitered decrease to create the V-neck on my Bruin sweater. You can see that the center front stitch travels up from the body of the sweater seamlessly, creating a polished finish. Before I show you how to do this in practice, I want to call out a few critical things on paper. So I've drawn a mock-up here of the top view of the shoulder and neckline. The direction of my knitting goes this way, as you can see with the arrow, which means that all of my V's are going to be lined up in this direction. There are three major things that are going to make this technique successful. You're going to be picking up a stitch exactly centered at the base of each V at the neckline. So that for the back centered stitch, it's here, and the front centered stitch, it's here. When we flip this around to mimic what it's actually going to look like when we're picking up and knitting the neckline, you can see that here's where I joined the left front and the right front. This stitch was the last stitch formed from the left front, and then this stitch is the first stitch formed on the right front. And here is my midline. So I want to make sure this now becomes my new V at the midline, and I want to make sure that I'm picking up and knitting into that stitch right there. So that's how you get this V right here that follows from the body of the sweater. The back centering doesn't matter quite as much because, first of all, the math on the pattern doesn't allow you, the math with this ribbing doesn't allow you to pick up directly from a V. So that's no big deal. It's going to be hidden by this welt anyhow, so you don't get the same kind of effect back here as you do on the front. The second thing you want to ensure is that you have an odd number of stitches between your two center stitches. So again, here's one center stitch and here's the back center stitch. You want to make sure that the stitches you pick up on the right side here are an odd number, and that is because your center stitch is always going to be a knit. So to start out with, you want to have the one next to it in 1x1 ribbing be a purl. So you want to start with a purl and end with a purl, which means you need an odd number of stitches. The third thing you want to make sure of is that you have an equal number of stitches between the right front and the left front. And that is just so that you're making sure that one side isn't pulling in more than the other, and you have a nice even finish on your sweater. If you really want to get meticulous about this, you can also place stitch markers at the top of the shoulder here and make sure that your right front and left front equal, and then your right back and left back equal. To help demonstrate this technique for you, I knit up a super simplified crop top version, sleeveless, of the Bruin sweater. The first thing I want to do for this technique is to identify and mark the center stitches. So here we have the front, which we'll do first, and I'm going to turn it around so you can see what it looks like in the direction that we knit it. Here you can see is the V on the last V on the left front, and then the first V on the right front. And we want to pick up and knit in between those two. And here you can see that column of V's formed from the left and right front. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that stitch that I'm going to pick up and knit into. And I'm going to go into both legs of it so I can see later on where to go. And then we'll do the same thing on the back side. Again, like I mentioned, it doesn't matter quite as much on the back side. Plus you'll have the welt on the real version to help hide it. So here I'm going to go right into, it's hard to see that far away, I'm going to go right into this column of V's. When I work neck bands, I work one round where I pick up and knit one stitch for every single row that I've worked on the body. And then on the next round, I decrease out a couple stitches using some knit two togethers. Usually I remove 2 out of every 7 stitches to help draw in the neckband a little bit. That's a personal choice. If you find that you get to the end of the body of your sweater and you're afraid that it's too loose around your neck, you can decrease out more stitches and tighten up that neckband, or you can have a more relaxed neckband and take out fewer stitches. Okay, so I have my center stitch marked at the back here, and I'm going to pick up and knit starting at the stitch just to the left. So right there, grab my contrasting yarn here, and I'm gonna pick up and knit 1 stitch for every row worked. And I will meet you at that center front stitch to show you how that will work. Here I am at that center stitch marker. I've picked up and knit into this column that is just to the right of the center mark stitch. Now I'm going to pick up my center front stitch. I'm going to go 2 bars below that center and into the hole below that second bar and pick up and knit. Then I'm going to continue along. Here's my next column, so I'm going to find that next stitch and continue to pick up and knit along the right side of the neckband. Then I'm going to meet you at the back center stitch. Here we are back at the beginning. Here's our center back stitch marker, and I have worked my pick up and knit all the way just to the right of that center column. So I'm going to enter into this hole just below those 2 little legs, pick up and knit. At this point, I'm going to place my beginning of round marker, and I'm going to work that decrease round, making sure that when I get to the center front stitch, I have an odd number of stitches on the left side here. And then as I work the decreases over here, I'm going to make sure that they equal what is on the one side. And again, you want that odd number of stitches not to include your center front and back stitches. Here I am back at the beginning of round. I'm going to slip that marker onto my right needle, and then I'm going to work 1 round just establishing 1 by 1 rib. So we want this center stitch to be a knit, so that means that the next stitch is a purl. And I'm going to knit, purl all the way around, and if I've worked out everything correctly with my counting, then the center stitch in back here and the center stitch in front should be a knit stitch. Okay, coming up on the center back stitch, I'm ending up on a knit, so I am in good shape. The same thing happened on the front. That center front stitch was a knit. So we're looking good there. Slipping my marker, I'm going to continue working in 1 by 1 rib until I get to that 1 stitch prior to the center front marker. So I'll meet you there. Here's the purl stitch just to the right of our center knit stitch. At this point, I'm going to slip these 2 stitches together, kind of like we're going to do a knit 2 together, but I'm not going to actually knit the stitch. So I count over 2 stitches, and from right to left, I'm going to insert my needle and slip those 2 stitches together. Then this next stitch, I know it's a purl stitch, but I'm going to knit it. Now I take my left hand needle and I come back to those first 2 slipped stitches, and I'm going to pass them over the knit stitch. And that is what creates our mitered decrease. Then I'm going to continue in pattern, 1 by 1 rib. This next one's a knit stitch. So I'm just going to continue in pattern back to my 1 stitch before the center back, and I'll meet you there. Here we are in that stitch right before our center back. So again, I'm going to slip these 2 stitches together. I'm going to remove this marker just for now. I'm going to knit this next stitch. Now I'm going to pick up these stitches that I just slipped, and I'm going to pass it over that knit stitch. There you can see are these all lined up. Now I replace my beginning of round and keep working in 1 by 1 rib until you get all the way around on this round. I do want to point out on this round, you're going to end up with 3 knit stitches in a row surrounding that center mitered decrease, but that's okay. We're going to end up getting back to normal once we do the 4th round of this. So in the first round, we establish 1 by 1 rib. The second round, we do our first mitered decrease. The third round, we do a plain 1 by 1 rib all the way around, and then with those 3 knit stitches in a row. And then on the 4th round, we're going to decrease again. Every time you decrease, you're going to be removing 2 stitches for every mitered decrease you have. So on this sweater, every decrease round takes out 4 stitches because you have 2 for the front and 2 for the back. Now I've worked a full round of ribbing, plus I've done another half round to get us back to that center front stitch, and we're going to work another mitered decrease. Now you see that there are those 3 knit stitches in a row, but we essentially work them the same way. So slip these first 2 stitches together, knit this stitch, get that marker out of the way, and pass the slip stitches over, whoops, you can do them one at a time, over the knit stitch. And there is our second mitered decrease. And now you can see I'm back on track with a knit, purl, knit, purl. And I'm going to keep going and show you that center back decrease as well. Now I'm at the back, so I'll show you this for the last time. Slip those 2 together. Here I remove my marker, knit the next stitch, pass the slip stitches over the knit one, and replace my marker. At this point, we're complete with the 4 rounds that makes up the mitered decrease technique. The Bruin sweater has you work these 4 rounds another time so that you have a total of 8 rounds before starting the Italian Tubular Bind-off. But you can work it as much or as little as you want in order to get your desired neckband depth. I would recommend that you always do the multiple of 4 so that you end up with straight 1 by 1 ribbing and you don't have those 3 knit stitches together on your finished product. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial for the mitered decrease and that you learned something new today. Happy knitting!